Hello, good to see you again. This is part 2 of our 16-week overview of the history of Christianity. I am Professor Joseph Holbrook. I teach in the Religious Studies Department at Florida International University in Miami. And this week in this episode, I will review the growth of Christianity in communist China and post-colonial Africa as we discuss the shift of Christianity away from European areas and North America to the global South. Just as a reminder, this course is a core required introduction for our 15-credit certificate in Christian Studies, which we have inaugurated in the fall of 2022 in the Religious Studies Department at Florida International University in Miami. So let's begin with China. So in China, we have the resurgence of Christianity in the Middle Kingdom. In the years immediately before the Great War, which of course is the First World War, Christianity in China was in crisis. As China's relationship with the great powers worsened in the years of the 20th century, Christianity increasingly became stigmatized as a Western influence. Chinese nationalist movements came to see the rejection of Christianity as an integral aspect of their political programs. This is the exact opposite of what happened in Korea, where Christianity came to be seen as a patriotic movement loyal to Korea as a nation. So this did not bode well for Christianity in China. Along with this was the rise of the threeself movement. The Foreign Secretary of the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions argued that Chinese churches should be based on self-governance, self-support, and self-propagation, without being dependent on the West for their finances or outreach. These ideas were further explored at a Christian missionary conference in Shanghai in 1892, which concluded that the future well-being of the Chinese church depended on the indigenization of its leadership and modes of worship. The founding of the China Christian Independent Church in the years before the Great War reflects this concern for autonomy on the part of some Chinese Christians. This reminds me of a book that was given to me many years ago by a dear friend of mine and mentor, Dr. Dal Robinson, which was called Missionary Methods, St. Paul's or Ours by Roland Allen. This was considered a classic of missionary methods by Roland Allen, who was a missionary in Korea and Japan. And in this book, he does a comparative study of the success of church planting efforts in Japan, or the relative lack of success, and a much greater level of success in Korea. And he comes to the conclusion that one of the factors, not all of them, but one of them, was the three-self approach to self-governance, self-support, and self-propagation. And he endeavors to show from the scriptures that St. Paul took a similar approach in his church planting efforts in the New Testament. So I commend that book to you if you're interested in reading up more about missionary methods. Roland Allen's Missionary Methods, St. Paul's or Ours. And it will explain the three-self concept better than I could probably. Once the Great War had ended, Catholic and Protestant missionaries resumed their work in China. However, the occupation of China by Japan placed limitations on these efforts. More seriously, the 1949 Communist Revolution, like its European counterparts, was strongly anti-religious, regarding Christianity both as a Western influence and the opium of the people. Western missionaries realized the implications of this development and began a slow retreat from the People's Republic of China. Those that didn't were later expelled from China. Chinese Christianity and the threeself movement. These ideas were already familiar to Chinese Christians from the 1890s, but they became acutely important following the Communist Revolution of 1949. Wishing to avoid any suggestion that Christianity was a tool of Western imperialism or an unwelcome Western cultural import, Y.T. Wu, who was a Chinese Christian leader, initiated the threeself patriotic movement. The movement advocated the threeself strategy of self-governance, self-support, and self-propagation as a means of eliminating foreign influences. Realizing that it could not eliminate Christianity, the revolutionary government sought to do the next best thing, to control it. It's amazing to me that even today in 2020, many evangelical missionary groups ignore this principle of self-supporting and are heavily involved in short-term missions that create a long-term dependency and cripple the indigenous churches. However, that's a topic for another course. A more radical attempt to eliminate religion altogether arose during the Great Cultural Revolution in 1966. This is interesting because it corresponds to the rise of the countercultural movement, or the hippie movement, in 1966 through 1968, 1970 in the United States, and similar student movements in Mexico and France and Japan. It'd be interesting to do a study on what was going on in global culture, or at least cosmopolitan culture, that sparked these youth movements around the world. This movement in China aimed at eliminating foreign influence and any remaining bourgeois factors within the People's Republic of China, restoring Mao Zedong's prominence within the Chinese Communist Party. The campaign was against the four olds: old customs, old cultures, old habits, and old ideas. Launched in August of 1966, led to Red Guards destroying ancient buildings, records, and documents. Intellectuals were seen as a special threat and were targeted by the Red Guards for special treatment. And here you have a picture of the Red Guards marching with a banner that shows a typical communist banner showing the working class. I guess I should have this slide show the full view. Okay, that's a better view. You can see it a little better. And you can see that some of these Chinese students are quite young. Some of them in the second row there look like they might be 15 or 16. What ended the Cultural Revolution, fortunately, I guess you would say, in 1976 was the death of Mao Zedong. The Gang of Four, I remember this well, by the way. I was actually a young father and husband at the time. The Gang of Four, who were seen as the instigators of the violent and extreme elements of the Cultural Revolution, were arrested a month after Mao's death, causing rejoicing throughout much of China. The Cultural Revolution created a vacuum of meaning within China. The evidence suggests that Christianity rushed in to fill this vacuum, and religion often arises as an answer to the question of meaning. It's interesting that right now, as I'm recording this video, there's a lot of unrest and upheaval and protests going on in modern contemporary China in December of 2022. We'll see eventually, we'll get what happens there and get a historical perspective, but probably not right away. So the decade of the Cultural Revolution ended Western influence in the People's Republic of China. For Chinese Christianity, this meant the breaking of links with Western missionary organizations or denominational structures, and the emergence of forms of Christianity that actually were self-supporting, self-governing, and self-propagating. Many churches chose to operate outside the state system, such as the underground house church movement, which did not seek government authorization for its pastors and conducted services without government approval. Chinese Catholicism was a unique case because of the international connections in the authority structure, or the hierarchical structure leading up to the Vatican. Catholics in Macau and Hong Kong were able to retain links with the Vatican, but the People's Republic of China refused to allow the Catholic Church to operate within its borders if it was subject to foreign interferences, particularly in relation to the political agendas and the appointment of bishops. Since 1900, Christianity has grown substantially in all forms within China. The reason for this development are not fully understood. The Chinese government appears to have taken a pragmatic attitude towards this development, especially in working to secure a better relationship with the Vatican. Although some are suggesting that China may become the nation with the most Christians in the next few decades. That would upset the international order, wouldn't it, if China became the most Christian nation in a few years? Okay, post-colonial Africa. Let me come back over here for another picture. So, many in the 20th century regarded Christianity as a colonial religion imposed on native populations by their European masters. When the Europeans returned home, however, it was surprising that many colonial peoples did not abandon Christianity, despite beliefs to the contrary. In fact, the removal of Western power generally removed Western constraints, which had until then prevented the emergence of more culturally adapted forms of Christianity. The withdrawal of colonial powers in Britain and France during the 1960s allowed their churches to develop theologies, ministries, styles of worship which were adapted to their contexts, rather than being poor copies of those found in the homelands of the colonial powers. In most cases, the departure of colonial power was followed by renewal, as the cultural restraints on the various indigenous variants of Christianity were finally removed. Political independence rapidly led to ecclesiastical independence and the ending of cultural suppression of indigenous theologies and worship patterns. The two primary institutions left behind by the departure of Great Britain and France were Anglicanism and Catholicism. During the 19th century, Catholic and Protestant missionaries established churches throughout southern Africa. These were generally African implementations of European models, with little more than cosmetic adaptations to local culture. Catholicism became the dominant form of Christianity in the French and Belgian colonies, as did Anglicanism in the British colonies. Of course, the Dutch Reformed were in South Africa, with the long-term presence of the Dutch there. There were also African-initiated churches. Three major categories of AICs, African-initiated churches, can be identified. There were the Ethiopian and African churches, AICs which do not claim to be prophetic, nor to have special manifestations of the Holy Spirit, have been referred to as Ethiopian or Ethiopian-type churches in southern Africa, and African churches in Nigeria. Just as a point of nuance, there was a time when the word Ethiopian, at least in the Western Hemisphere, was equivalent to the word African. So a person in Jamaica calling themselves Ethiopian Christians would be essentially the same as calling themselves African Christians. It was not a reference necessarily to the nation state of Ethiopia. Those churches are generally earlier in origin than the other two types, and arose primarily as a political and administrative reaction to European mission-funded churches. There was also the second type, which is prophet, healing, and spiritual churches. Remember, we're talking about African-Initiated Churches, or AICs. These churches tended to have their historical and theological roots in the Pentecostal movement, emphasizing the working of the power of the Spirit in the church. This is the largest grouping of AICs, which includes a wide variety of some of the biggest churches in Africa. The African Apostolic Church in Central Africa would be one example. The Aladura and Harris churches of West Africa, the Zion Christian Church, and the Amanazaretha in Southern Africa. The theology of these churches tends to be more precisely formulated than in European mission-funded churches. The most obvious distinguishing feature of these churches throughout most of Africa is the almost universal use of uniforms for its members, often white robes with bright sashes. And let's go get a picture. There's at least a partial picture of some uniforms. The AICs, or African-Initiated Churches, also include new Pentecostal churches, a third group. This group of churches emphasize the power and the gifts of the Holy Spirit. They are probably the fastest growing expression of Christianity in Africa and have exploded on the African religious scene since 1975, to such an extent that they are challenging many previously accepted assumptions about the character of African Protestantism. The examples of these kinds of churches are the Deeper Life Church in Nigeria, the Zimbabwe Assemblies of God in Africa, and the Grace Bible Church in South Africa. The differences between these churches and those of the Western Pentecostal origin has mainly to do with their forms of church government. In the cases of the new churches, the leadership is entirely black and is essentially local and autonomous, with no organizational links with Pentecostal or denominations outside of Africa. The history of Christianity in Africa in the 20th century is also illustrated by the Republic of South Africa. Rivalry between Britain and the Netherlands as colonial powers in this region led to two churches of European origin in South Africa: the Dutch Reformed Church, as I mentioned earlier, and the Church of the Province of South Africa. These churches tended to be politically disengaged and did not initially challenge the policy of racial segregation known as apartheid, which is an Afrikaans word for separateness, enforced by the National Party governments of South Africa after 1948. Resistance to the policy emerged primarily from the Church of the Province of South Africa. Following the Soweto riots of 1976, Desmond Tutu, born in 1931, became an increasingly vocal critic of the government. Tutu was the Bishop of Lesotho from 1976 until 1978, and then the Bishop of Johannesburg. He quickly became the figurehead of the anti-apartheid movement and was awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1984 and became the first black archbishop of Cape Town in 1986. This gave him a high-profile platform from which he could challenge the government's policies with relative impunity. The expansion of Christianity in southern Africa has raised many questions, not least in relation to how the gospel interacts with the African traditional religions. One of the most important themes in such traditional religion is the cult of the ancestors, based on the belief that one's ancestors are an essential link in a hierarchical chain of power stretching from this world to the spirit world. Deceased ancestors are integral to the traditional African social structure. While remaining part of the family, they are understood to be intermediaries with the spirit world. African-initiated churches often criticize traditional religion on the one hand while developing practices that can be seen as Christian alternatives. Thus, many such churches recognize the ministry of prophets who play a role similar to that of the Mganga, doctors or healers. In Swahili, Mganga means doctors or healers in the cult of the ancestors. Okay, so that is our presentation for today. I think we will stop here, and I thank you for your kind attention. As always, it looks like we'll have one more episode on Pentecostalism in Latin America, and that will be the conclusion of our 16-week stroll through the history of Christianity. Thank you again. My name is Joseph Holbrook. Contact me if you have questions about the certificate in Christian Studies. My personal email is joseinmiami@gmail.com, Jose, letter N is in Nancy, MIAMI @gmail.com, or call me on my cell phone 786-395-5402 if you're interested in pursuing the certificate. Okay, have a beautiful day. It's a beautiful December day, and I believe there's some football games on today. So thank you again, and take care. I'll see you next and last episode on Pentecostalism in Latin America. Take care now.